What's up? This is Brian Cooper, and this is just going to be a quick little walk around of my 2003 Infiniti G35 6MT. So let's get started. All right, here it is. Of course, came out to run it through the car wash, and of course it rained as soon as I left the car wash. So I had to just try to sit in the parking lot for a few minutes to let it, stop raining for a little bit. So unfortunately it does have rain still on it. I have had some paint work done to the car just to kind of fix some of the stuff that was wearing out. The rear bumper that was on this was really a crappy bumper that somebody had put on at some point. So I replaced that with a later model like Rev Up bumper. You can see I've got Rev Up tails. And then when we did all that, I actually had the emblems shaved at the same time. So the whole basically rear end of the car has been painted. Of course, we've got XXR. I think they're 522s or 528s or something like that. And then I even had some paint work done on the front end as well, just because the front had a ton of rock chips. There was like little spots where the paint was starting to peel on the front bumper, and it just really kind of, made it look not the greatest in my opinion. So when I had the work done on the rear to replace that nasty bumper, I went ahead and had the front taken care of as well. So of course that means that there are sections of the car that do have newer paint than others. So it's not exactly perfect, but it's pretty close, and it looks 1,000 times better than it did before. I can't stand rock chips that have been on there for too long. Of course, I do have coilovers on this. These are the TN street basis coilovers, so they're not super aggressive, but they do make a difference on the ride quality as well as the handling. I think these are perfect for daily driving. As well as getting some corners in. The ride height's adjustable. The dampening is not, but in my opinion, they actually ride perfectly. And I've taken this car to the drag, and I think it does really well. I think if this were to have any more of a stiffer suspension setup, I don't think it would be as comfortable to drive around. So it's kind of the trade-off if you've got like a sport suspension. So this one kind of toes that line pretty well. I do have a slightly staggered tire setup. These wheels are an 18 by 10. I think it's a 25 offset, and then the tires are a 255 all around, although the rears are a 40 series tire while the front is a 35 series tire. So it's what kind of gives it that little bit of a rake. It also helps with tire clearance as well. It could probably fit with the 40s up front, but I think it just looks a little bit better, and again, it rides well. Front tires are basically brand new. I think the back tires probably have about 30 or 40% life left. So they're okay for a little while longer. They'll probably need to be replaced before the end of the year, maybe the beginning of next year, depending on how I drive it. There's no rubbing with the tires. I did have the rear fenders just rolled flat. They're not pulled or anything like that, so there's no bacon going on the fenders. Everything's smooth. You can go over just about any size speed bump and you don't really scrape, as long as you don't high center the car. Sometimes you got to take an angle on things, but that's to be expected. But you can actually get out of most things just fine. Again, no tire rubbing or anything like that, so you can drive on the interstate just fine. Actually took this car on the interstate all the way to Missouri back at the beginning of the year. Spent about 2 weeks there and then drove back. Everything went well there. Other than that, you can see I've got smoked corner lenses there on the front corner, which is about the only other kind of cosmetic thing on the outside of the car. I try to just keep it as clean as possible. All right, so here's just a little bit of a look on the inside of this car. This is probably the one weak point of all these G35s. This is where the Nissan starts to show through. Unfortunately, I've got a bunch of Toyotas that fare a little bit better over time. But first off the bat is the seats in this car are actually pulled from a G35 coupe. The seats in this car originally were just trashed, as they always get. The leather was tearing apart, and it was just in awful shape. And I had the opportunity to find some coupe seats that were actually in decent shape. It's always hard to find ones that are perfect, and these are not perfect, but they are 1,000 times better than the ones that were in here before. And these actually grip you a little bit better. Apologize for them being a little bit dirty. I just noticed that I need to wipe them down. But these things are in pretty good shape. I did have a little bit of tearing happening here on that bolster, because it's just what these things tend to do, which is why I went ahead and just put a little bit of a patch kit on there just to kind of hold things together and try to keep things as nice as possible for as long as possible. Other than that, we still have the stock steering wheel, as you can see. The big other thing that we've got inside here is I spent pretty good money to have this Android head unit installed, and I've got a whole video of how this thing works when it's plugged in, which is also on my YouTube. I can link over if needed be. But at the same time as doing the install here, we have a GPS receiver here on the dashboard with all the wires tucked. And then we also have, hidden behind the rear view camera, we have a dash cam that's there. And again, all the wires are tucked, and that does feed into here, and it does have an SD card, so it's recording at all times. So it's a nice little dashboard camera that is already wired up and ready to go. And again, you can't even see it at all until you actually get behind the mirror, so the install went well there. The only part of that system that I have not finished is I did actually install the rear view camera back here. As you can see, it's mounted and the wires are tucked at the moment underneath the back carpet, but I have not actually wired this up yet. I just haven't found the I haven't spent the time to find the exact signal wire that comes off the reverse lights in the harness there, and found the perfect spot to kind of tie it in and make sure everything is clean, so that when the backup camera, or when the reverse lights are turned on, the backup camera engages. That's the only thing that's left to do on that. Continuing on with stereo related stuff, this does have the you can see it does have the Bose stereo in here. Got some trash back here also, but I've got an older set of Pioneer 10s back here. It's just a sealed box. I think it's like maybe a 600, 800 watt amp. Nothing too crazy, but that's tied into the head unit up there. You know, you're not going to be breaking any glass or anything like that with this stereo system, but it's, you know, it's good. I like to have a little bit extra bass. It's fine. Looking at the rear seats here, this does have the optional reclining rear seats. That's what these handles are for on the left and right. So these seats can actually move back and move forward, which not all these cars had. Very few of the sports sedans, from what I understand, had that, but this one did somehow. And you can see the back of the seats, and it's, you know, obviously these come out of a coupe, so it's kind of interesting. You can fold those forward. So I mean, that kind of has come in handy. But most of the time you don't really need it. All right, so now I'll go ahead and crank it up, let you see the mileage and all of that. See, very smooth, very easy startup. Now everything is listed on my page as far as all the stuff that's been done with this as far as maintenance. But this year, I think it was this year, might have been late last year, we did put a new starter on this thing. I guess I could show you the engine bay while I'm talking. All right, so yeah, here's the engine bay. So I did state that this is not the original engine to this car. The original one actually quit on me a couple years back now at least, and I was gonna do it myself, and I just didn't have the time and effort. So I actually took this and I bought a junk engine, so that was part of it. But this actually is an engine out of a automatic car. When it was put in, it had something around like this, the 70-ish thousand miles on it. So this one actually runs really well. The only things that I've had to do to it since having it was this year was kind of the big year for me to try to get all of the leaks fixed. So you can see here, we've got new valve covers on both the passenger side and driver side, because that is the only way you can actually get the spark plug tube seals replaced, because they're kind of a pressed in deal. So both of those were replaced, as well as the valve covers that come along with it. These engines are bad for having oil leaks on the exhaust manifolds. And now the good news is this side of the engine is 100% perfectly sealed, and this side of the engine, I apparently did not do a good enough job on the install, so I need to go back through and redo a couple things, because there's just a little bit of oil that will still drip down. I don't know if you can even see it. There's just a little bit of oil that'll drip down there between that kind of crevice there on the manifold. So when you've been running it for a little while, it will burn smoke, burn the oil off of that. Again, it's really normal for these things to have that issue. And I guess for some reason, I think that where it's leaking from is right up here. There's a spot up here where you've got to add kind of just the right amount of RTV or sealant up there. And I'm guessing I just didn't do it exactly right, as it will just every now and then, it'll kind of just build up some oil moisture and drip down onto the manifold. I do have another gasket. So I just need to find the time to actually pull this thing apart and replace that one, and it should be perfectly good to go, just like the driver's side is. Now other stuff, we did a lot when the engine was out, because you've got to basically pull off the whole front end of these cars, kind of put it into service mode to pull the engine out. So when everything was out, we did a lot at the same time. So I actually had a brand new radiator, AC condenser, and dual electric fan assembly installed. There was nothing necessarily wrong with the ones that were in there before, but I figured they had, you know, 130, 140,000 miles on them, and if they had to come out, and if they're gonna have to go back in, I'd rather put new ones back in. So those were replaced, and I've got receipts for them. And then it turned out that the engine that went in this car had a bad AC compressor, which is kind of ironic because the one that was on it before was working fine. So I did have to put a new AC compressor on it, which is perfect because it had all the rest of the stuff on here anyway. So we basically put a whole AC kit on, got it charged up, and the AC works perfectly now. Other just kind of regular maintenance stuff is not too long ago I replaced the air filter, and at the same time we did the valve covers. We put all new NGK, I think they were the laser iridiums or whatever. We put new spark plugs in, as well as new coil packs. We actually did coil packs twice because the first ones that I purchased were the wrong ones, and we found that out when we put everything back together. So we replaced those with a much better high quality set that worked a whole lot better. So this car runs really well. I have also stayed up with the oil changes. I try to keep all my receipts for these things, but usually every 5,000 to 6,000 miles I go through and have a full synthetic oil swapped out. Usually it's Mobil 1, kind of just depends on, you know, where I take it to or if I do it myself. Moving back here, I do have an aftermarket exhaust on here. This is kind of a no-name, kind of like a MagnaFlow knockoff. When I had this installed, we also deleted the resonator under the center of the car. So it's, you know, maybe not straight piped, but it's got a much better sound to it there. This car still has the cats, so that's not a problem for any kind of inspection. And in my opinion, it's one of those exhaust systems that sounds good when you're inside or outside the vehicle without it being loud. I don't have anybody with me to kind of help me with this, so I'm just gonna have to do it myself. What I'll do is I'll kind of rev it up a little bit and let you hear for it yourself. Let's turn the AC off. I should also note, I'm looking at it while I'm revving it, is when we had the engine taken out and put back in, of course a new clutch pack was installed, and then because these have a dual mass flywheel that you can't resurface, I actually bought another flywheel that was a single mass flywheel. It's nothing too crazy or high performance or anything, but it definitely made a difference in the power delivery. You can just kind of see, you know, how quickly and easily this thing revs. I mean, it's almost like the RPM gauge can't even keep up. But it's a very nice flywheel. It made a huge difference on how this car feels. It actually made it feel a whole lot faster, even though, I mean, of course we had a much healthier engine in there, but you put a much healthier engine in there and pair it with a single mass flywheel and just an Exetti, you know, just a regular stage 1 clutch pack, and this thing frickin' runs awesome. It does have one check engine light, well, one check engine code, which I just reran again. I think it's a P0037, which just shows to be like a bank 1. Oxygen sensor circuit is reading low or not reading at all or something. So that means that there is some sort of a issue going on. I think it's on the passenger side with the oxygen sensors. That just means I need to replace that. It's not a big deal. I did right at the beginning of the year, again, end of the year, just can't remember what was what at what point, but I did actually replace the Y pipe underneath of the car here, as that's another common issue, to have the Y pipe. It's a common issue to have the Y pipes kind of leak after enough time, and sure enough, that's what happened with mine. The flex pipe was starting to make noise, so there's a little bit of an exhaust leak coming from that, and I thought that was possibly why I was getting a check engine code, because it's right there after the O2 sensor. So I put the new Y pipe on, got everything sealed up in new gaskets. As you can see, there's no exhaust leak now. But that light is still there. So it doesn't seem to be a problem with the cats or anything. It's just an oxygen sensor that I need to replace. And I just, one of those things that I'll get to it when I get to it. It runs fine, so I just haven't done it yet. All right, so I think that's gonna do it for this car. I'm sure there's some little things that I've missed as I'm walking around. There's there's always things that I'm noticing. Like for instance, like when I lowered this car, I went ahead and did the camber arms for the rear, as well as a tow bolt install, so all of the rear alignment is good to go, so you're not blowing through tires on this car. That's another thing that a lot of people just overlook. They just slam these cars, they don't do anything with the suspension alignment, and then you run out of back tires in usually 5,000 miles or less sometimes. So that's all done. So this car tracks straight. It's actually got a lifetime alignment at Firestone, so I mean, honestly, I could take it down there anytime and get it rechecked again. It's probably due for that here soon, actually, so I'll probably knock that out at some point. But oil change was just done recently. I think I've got probably 4-ish thousand miles left on the oil change. So it was just done, I think, in the last month or so. And so yeah, I think that's gonna do it. My whole intent with this car was, I've got some other cars that are a little bit more modified, and I've got ones that are completely stock, but I always wanted to have a 4-door sedan that was a stick shift, that had good power, that was comfortable inside, that had automatic climate control and a sunroof and all that kind of stuff. And then I found out that the G35 was a perfect car to kind of fit all those things. So this is a car that I could, you know, grab a few friends and we can go drive down and go to like Carowinds or go down to the beach or something like that, and it's perfectly fine on the highway. It gets, you know, like mid-20s or something like that, fuel economy on the highway. But then if I want to, I can still take it to like Tail of the Dragon, and it's by no means the fastest car out there. It's very limited based on the tires and suspension and stuff like that compared to a lot of what goes out there. But it's just a really fun car for the mountains. It's a really fun car for like a daily driver. It's just a good all-arounder. You know, the stereo is great. The seats are great. It's got heated seats and all that stuff. So it's just a really fun car. And I know there's a lot of other G35s that are out there, but I've definitely tried to stay on top of all the weird little maintenance quirks that these cars are kind of known for. So that should do it. Appreciate everybody's time watching this. Thanks so much, and have a great day.